Guys, I'm gonna read for you chapter 6, and this will be the end of part 1. Chapter 7 takes us into part 2. So this is chapter 6 of Zach's Lie, and it's on page 45. The day is Thursday, August 17. We are being kept like prisoners in our own hotel. They have taken our phones away to remove the temptation, Aunt Doris told us. Uncle Don was a lot more blunt. You don't know anybody and nobody knows you. What good is a phone? When the housekeeper comes to clean, we're shuffled into the adjoining room until she's finished. We never go outside, and the tans we got over the summer have faded to the color of egg salad. Things are weird, which Aunt Doris says is perfectly normal under the circumstances. I think the reason they have kept us here this long is so we'll be eager to start our new life. If I have to endure another day of indoctrination, as Uncle Don calls it, I might lose my mind. Day after day and hour after hour, we discuss our cover story, who to watch out for and how to handle it if one of us slips up. A psychologist came by one day and interviewed us individually and in a group. Somehow she got me to talking about my Caped Crusader days and seemed particularly interested in my wearing Joanne's red leotards. After this, I decided to skip mentioning Commander If, fearing Marshal Shrink would put me in a straitjacket. Beware of what you tell the shrinks. But the thing that's really bugging me is that Mom and Joanne never mention Dad anymore. It's like he never existed or something. Well, he thinks this is weird. Look at us, we're living through COVID. Nothing could be weirder than this, and look, we're making it. Jack refused to dye his hair blonde. But we have to change your appearance, Aunt Doris said. It's for your own safety. No, Jack insisted. If you bleach my hair, I'll look like an albino. What kind of disguise is that? Aunt Doris shook her head. You're really missing the spirit of all this. Heather's coming by today to give you a hand, Uncle Don said. Heather? Jack's question was answered by a knock on the door. Heather was some kind of federal beautician. She came into the room, pushing a trunk on wheels. It's makeover time. She gave them an enthusiastic smile, opened her trunk, and pulled out a pile of fashion magazines. Your dreams are about to come true. The answer to Jack's dream was not in the trunk, unless Heather had the key to his father's cell hidden there. His mother and sister were hesitant at first, but Heather won them over. Within minutes, the three of them were pointing at photographs and giggling as if they were at a slumber party. They need to go to Salón de Belleza Pilar. It's right down the street across from the pulperia. A vote was taken. The Grangers will be blue-eyed blondes, Heather announced. But not this Granger, Jack thought, refusing to participate in the vote. He liked his brown hair and brown eyes. He sat in the corner and watched uncomfortably as Heather snipped, combed, teased, and dyed his mother and sister. When Heather finished, they looked like twins. He would not have recognized them if he hadn't seen the transformation himself. And now for the final touch. Heather took out a small case filled with colored contact lenses. None of the Osbornes wore glasses. With lenses in place, the Granger twins had matching blue eyes. You're next, Jack. He shook his head. You're not dyeing my hair blonde. Heather looked like he had slapped her in the face, but recovered quickly with a bright smile. The girls will go crazy over you. No. His mother ordered him into the adjoining room. Jack, you've got to go along with this. No. His mother ordered him into the adjoining room. Please, but what am I going to do when my real hair starts to grow in? His hair was dark brown like his father's. You'll dye it like we do. It only takes a few minutes. There's nothing to it. Women do this all the time. Well, I'm not a woman. What about gym class? She stared at him, not understanding. Jack turned red with embarrassment. It finally dawned on her what he was talking about. "Oh," she said, "I see what you mean." They walked back into the other room. Heather cut Jack's hair, but she didn't dye it, any of it. She taught him how to put in the blue contacts, which was not easy. Jack wasn't used to having foreign objects anywhere near his eyes, and blinked every time the contact came in for a landing. But Heather finally prevailed, and he was now a blue-eyed boy. A week later, Uncle Don told them that everything was in place for their relocation. They were leaving in the morning. "From now on, you are the Grangers. I want you to use your new names even when you're talking privately to each other. And," Aunt Doris added, "we've arranged to have you to see your dad before you go." "I don't want to see him," Wanda said. Aunt Dora looked confused. "But it might be your last chance for a very long time." "I still don't want to," Wanda said angrily, and stamped into the adjoining room and slammed the door. "I do," Jack said. It was all he had been thinking about for the past 3 weeks. 2 hours later, Zack and his mother were put into a van and driven to the Federal Detention Center. Agent Pelton led them down a hallway to a door with a uniformed guard standing in front of it. The guard opened the door and told them to go in. When they got inside, Zack's mother stayed near the door. "I'll stand here," she said. Zack stared at his father with alarm. He was pale and had lost a lot of weight. He wore a bright orange short-sleeved jumpsuit. Silver manacles were locked around his wrists and ankles. He was seated at a metal table with a green enamel top. His leg manacles ran through an eye bolt screwed into the floor so he couldn't get off the stool he was sitting on. The room had one window. The glass was frosted so you couldn't see out, and the frame was covered with heavy wire mesh so you couldn't get out. "I'm sorry you had to see me this way, Jacko," his father said. Zack sat on the stool opposite his father and stared down at the table. The green enamel surface was carved with graffiti. "How have you been?" his father asked. Zack could not seem to raise his head. "I'm so sorry about all this," his father's voice was choked with emotion. Zack felt hot tears on his cheeks. "Is Joanne here?" Neil Osborne asked, glancing at Mary. She stared at her feet. She didn't answer. "No," Zack managed to say. Tears splattered on the tabletop. "I wanted a chance to explain things to you myself." His father swallowed hard. "I'm not sure when we'll be seeing each other again." Zack looked up from the table. "But you'll come to live with us when you get all of this straightened out." "I don't know," his father spoke in almost a whisper. "It's better this way for now. It's safer." He looked down at his hands for a moment. "This whole thing's my fault, Jacko. Joanne and you and your mom have every right to be disgusted with me." "Well, I'm not disgusted." Jack wasn't sure how he felt at the moment. Confused, sad, scared, perhaps all three at once. "When are they going to let you out?" "I don't know, son, but it could be a long time. But if they tell the DEA what they want to know, we haven't gotten that far, Jacko. The problem is that they already know a lot. So I have to tell them things they don't know, things that'll help them. I'm not sure I know enough to get out of here." Old. The idea of his father staying in jail had never occurred to Zack, so he felt sick to his stomach. "I want to tell you what happened, Budtorov," his father said. "I wanted to tell Joanne too. I guess it'll be up to you to tell her when she decides she wants to hear it." Zack did not think this would be any time in the near future. "I ran into money problems soon after I bought the airline company," his father began. And there's always money problems. "I had to mortgage everything we owned to keep it going. People get cheated in mortgage. We're never supposed to charge each other usury. I couldn't make my loan payments and the bank was going to take everything. The banks are cheating people because they're charging usury, which is against biblical teachings. I was desperate. I didn't know what to do. Then I met a man in Colombia named Alonso Aznar. He offered to bail me out. Wrong decision. I sold him part of the company. In return, he paid off my debts. His father took a deep breath. What I'm about to tell you next is very hard for me, but I promised myself that if I got the chance, I would tell you the truth regardless of what you might think of me. I'm not going to candy coat this, Jacko. Alonzo Aznar runs a drug cartel. The men who came to the house and threatened you are his men. Zach did not want to ask his next question because he was afraid of the answer. Did you know about the cartel before you started working for it? His father looked directly at him. I'm not going to lie to you, Jacko. I'm ashamed to admit it, but I knew what his business was and what I was going to be doing for him. I told myself that I'd do it for a year, get the company back on its feet, and then break off the partnership. He continued looking at Zach without wavering. There's something else. I liked what I was doing, Jacko. The money was fabulous, and I liked Alonzo. We became friends. I guess I went a little crazy. The year came and went. I had more money than I knew what to do with. But then I didn't want to leave. When the means are not correct, the end result will always be a disaster. That's a philosophical truth. What about all the drugs you were bringing into the country? Well, that was part of the craziness. With the exception of what I did to you, the part I regret the most, I didn't think about the harm I was causing. I told myself that if I didn't fly for them, someone else would. My thinking was totally screwed up and totally wrong. Your mom and I started to have problems. I don't want to go into details, but I want you to know that the problems were caused entirely by me. I also want you to know that she didn't have the slightest idea of what I was doing. But as far as she knew, I was flying legitimate cargo. You've got to believe me on this. Zach did. He glanced at his mother. She was still standing next to the door with her head down. She hated drugs of any kind. She didn't smoke. She didn't drink alcohol. She wasn't even reluctant to take over-the-counter remedies for headaches and other aches and pains. She was even reluctant. His father held his manacled wrists up. It's easy to have regrets after you've been caught, but I deserve to be wearing these things. I deserve to be in prison. What I did was wrong. I gave up everything I loved and nearly got you all killed. I can't undo what I've done, but as soon as you're safe, I'm going to do everything in my power to break up this cartel. I'm going to tell them what I know so that I can live with myself. I'm going to tell them because it's the right thing to do. Zach's mother let out an anguished sob and fled through the door. The guard stepped inside. Zach's father waved him away, but the guard stayed where he was. Do you still have the jack-in-the-box? Jack nodded. Good. Keep it safe. Do you take off tomorrow? Yes. I wish I was going with you. I did too. I'm afraid you're going to have to leave, son, the guard said. And Zach stood and walked around the table to his father. He put his arms around him and said, I love you, Dad. That means more to me than you'll ever know, Jacko. At Salt Lake City, the Grangers was the last to get off the airplane. A black van was waiting for them on the tarmac beneath the jetway. In the front seat were two bulky men wearing suits. The Grangers climbed in the back and Uncle Don slid the door closed. Everything set? We're clear, the driver said and stepped on the accelerator. So it's Salt Lake City, Zach thought. But it wasn't. They drove for about 15 minutes and pulled into the parking lot of a large shopping mall. Here's your new car, Aunt Doris pointed to a metallic gray minivan and held a set of keys out to Mrs. Granger. The minivan was old. The driver's door had a big dent in it. Nice wheels, Zach commented. His mother gave him a tired look and took the keys. They had left behind a Range Rover and a red Mercedes convertible. When Mrs. Granger was Mrs. Osborne, she would not have dreamed of driving a minivan. Now she owned one. Oh, how horrible. Wow. Zach looked at his sister for her reaction. There was none. Wanda was not wavering from the I must be courageous role she had adopted almost from the moment this awful thing had happened to them. So yeah, this family obviously has never been in the third world. Zach helped Uncle Don transfer their bags into the back of the minivan and saw that the license plate was from Nevada. So we're moving to Nevada. Smart kid, Uncle Don pointed at a green Ford Taurus parked across from the minivan. Doris will ride with you, and I'll lead in our rental. He looked at Wanda. Anyone want to ride with me? Wanda smiled, but didn't say yes. The man who had driven them from the airport scanned the parking lot. Looks clean. You want us to tell you a ways just in case? Uncle Don shook his head. I think we're in good shape here. The black van drove away. Wanda finally spoke up. I'll ride with Uncle Don. Zach got into the back seat of the minivan behind his mother and Aunt Doris, and they followed the Ford Taurus. Las Vegas or Reno? Zach asked. His mother looked at Aunt Doris. Lake Tahoe. Zach couldn't think of any other cities in Nevada. It's safe to tell him now, Aunt Doris said. His mother looked at Zach in the rearview mirror. Elko. Where? Elko, Nevada. Where's that? 3.5 hours from here. Up in the mountains? Aunt Doris added. It's beautiful. You'll like it. No, I won't, Zach thought. If there's mountains, I'll go. And he was right. To Zach, the word mountains meant the Rockies, the Cascades, the Himalayas. The Nevada mountains were short, brown, ragged rocks. It's a good place to get some thinking done. The town of Elko lay at the base of the rocks. Commander If said the landscape looked like Mars. It's a desert. I love the desert, his mother said. Then why didn't you pick Palm Springs? It wasn't on the list, Mrs. Granger explained. And even if it had been, Jack, sorry. Zach, we couldn't afford to live there. Please don't make this any more difficult than it already is. Money problems again. Zach wished the Ford Taurus was behind them so he could turn around and see his sister's face. He bet Commander If $1 million that her mouth was hanging open in utter horror. Commander If did not take the bet. They turned off the freeway onto a busy street and drove past hotels, gambling casinos with flashing lights, the Northeastern Nevada Museum, and a small shopping mall, which Aunt Doris pointed to and said, That's where your space is. Where? Mrs. Granger craned her neck. Between the coffee shop and the grocery store. What space? Zach asked. I think it's a good spot, Aunt Doris continued. Idaho Street is the main road through town. There's a lot of local traffic, and there's a big casino right across the street with busloads of gamblers. What space? Zach asked a little louder. I'm opening a bookstore, his mother explained, which was news to Zach. In their previous life, his mother had been a very successful realtor. Why? Zach asked. I worked in a bookstore all through college, and I loved it. I'm tired of selling houses, but I've got to make a living. I can't work in the gold mine, and I'm not going to become a cocktail waitress or a card dealer at one of the casinos. Zach's father had gotten tired of his job too, and that was the reason why they had become the Grangers. What gold mine? He asked. One of the biggest in the United States, Aunt Doris said. Most people in Elko work for the mine in one way or another. Will we get free books? Zach asked. A lot of free books. Zach was happy to hear this. They continued down Idaho Street, passing through downtown Elko, which had more pickup trucks parked along the curb than cars and more cowboy boots on people's feet than shoes. Yippity-dee-ka-day, Commander If said. Turning off Idaho, they entered a neighborhood of small houses with trees growing in front of them, which Zach was glad to see. I was beginning to think that nothing grew here higher than our knees, Zach commented. No one laughed. The streets all had tree names like pine, juniper, oak, cedar, fir, ash, and maple. They took a right on Elm Street and pulled over to the curb. Uh-oh, Elm Street. Mrs. Granger, here's your new house, Aunt Doris announced. Zach's mother shut the engine off. Oh! Her disappointment was obvious. I know it's not exactly what you're used to, Aunt Doris said quickly, but it's the best we can do right now. Gold prices are up, and it's difficult to find affordable rentals. And as you know, we didn't have much time to relocate you. Zach's parents had never rented a house in their lives. The house they had left behind had 5,000 square feet. This house looked smaller than their former garage. But you said there were 3 bedrooms, Mrs. Granger said. There are, but they're small. Zach opened the van's sliding door. Ignoring the blast of dry heat, he hurried over to the Taurus, not wanting to miss a second of his sister's shock. He wasn't disappointed. Her mouth hung open with her blue eyes, which used to be brown, and looked like they were going to pop out of their sockets. This was nothing compared to her reaction when she saw her bedroom, which was smaller than her closet at their old house. She began to cry, but the house was so hot that her mascara-tinted tears evaporated before they got halfway down her cheeks. Zach's bedroom was even smaller, but it didn't bother him much. Less space to clean. Commander Ift liked the room too. It was just his size. Uncle Don banged his shin on a cardboard box that had fallen from one of the many precarious stacks moved to the tiny house the week before. It seemed a lot bigger when it was empty. What will we do with everything? Mr. Granger asked. I warned you that we couldn't take it all with us, Uncle Don said. Zach's mother and Aunt Doris shot him a look. We didn't take it all with us, Mrs. Granger said icily. You took most of what we owned. Uncle Don started to protest, but Aunt Doris cut him off. Don, why don't you go out and see if you can find us some food? She pushed him toward the front door, which was about 5 steps from the kitchen. Want to come with me, Zach? Uncle Don asked, and Zach shook his head, and Uncle Don left, happy to get out of there. Mrs. Granger stared hopelessly at the strewn furniture and stacks of boxes. What are we going to do, Doris? Aunt Doris put her arm around Mrs. Granger's shoulders. We'll unpack what we can and rent a storage unit for the rest. A bigger place is bound to come up. Consider this your temporary home until then. Classic case of materialism gone out of hand. But this is your average family. It's because it's what the media and the media just constantly pushes into your brain. Buy, consume. And now they're frustrated because they can't keep all their stuff. They need to come here and take them on the road to Olancho and show them how people live